Greetings all. This is Hairy Nick.
This is Justin.
How is Justin today?
I'm doing well in the third person.
We're here to do a bit of speculating. Because on the FFG Organised Play Twitter, we had confirmation of the points change, the first points change for X-Wing 2nd Edition.
There was some salt over this, though.
There was a little bit of salt over this, and I just want to quickly address this because the choices FFG had here was announce this and then immediately announce the system open that is immediately going to happen after that will have all these points changes, which wrecks everyone's list potentially that was going to this.
Yeah.
People were concerned because they're not affecting these points changes immediately in the system open, which I don't think is... See, yeah. I understand you want everything to be updated as much as possible, but the amount of potential issues that creates for people coming to the tournament...
Yeah, if someone's coming from overseas or something like that, you've got to basically bring all your cards with you.
Suddenly they can't fly the list they brought with them. Yeah, that would suck. And like everything, they give a grace period. A new ship comes out. It's, 2 weeks until it's tournament legal?
Yeah.
At least for big tournaments, not for short tournaments, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think doing this, announcing 2-3 weeks ahead of time is fantastic. FFG, do more of this.
Yeah.
Give us as much notice as possible because I think it's a fantastic thing. I believe they said this is going to happen twice a year with the points change. I would prefer it to be 4 times a year, like Magic do with their bannings. I think 4 times is the magic number. Once every 6 months means something can be a bit degenerative for a little bit too long, but this is not FAQs. FAQs can potentially happen a lot faster. We'll see what happens with that. Actually, on the topic of FAQs, when we're looking at points changes specifically address issues in power level. FAQs address issues in design.
So something like Dash Han, that's... for another time.
This is a contentious point for a lot of people. My issue with Dash Han is it's a fault in design because Han should not work out the same arc. You can feel free to disagree, but the fact that it's not seeing meta share is not the point. The fact that it's fundamentally breaking a card's function is not really ideal and not something we want moving forward as new stuff comes out. So if something like Dash Han is going to be addressed by FFG, that would be in an FAQ. When we're looking at points, which we're going to have a look at today, we're thinking mainly power level. Meta share is a big factor, but also making sure it's all adhering to the ethos of points that FFG have put in. There's a lot more weighting towards pilot abilities.
Yeah.
FFG are making sure if something has a very powerful pilot ability, that is weighted in the points as well.
And just speaking of, realistically, these points, they're not going to go up by a huge amount. Maybe,
No, I don't think it's going to be a huge spike or something like that.
No, I think maybe 2-3 points is the average, probably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd agree. There's one instance when I think it could be around 5, 6, 7 points, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
This is all just speculating on what we think is going to happen. I'm not going to name any specific point value, just the things that we in general think will go up and go down. Yeah. Also, it's worth pointing out that we have not done all the playtesting that FFG had. We're making very broad statements about a lot of different things. Remember, when you start to adjust the points over here, the points over here are less or more problematic. So we're balancing everything as if it's in this meta right now in a vacuum. So just bear that in mind as we have a look at these. Let's just go through this faction by faction. And we're going to start off with the Rebel faction and chat about a few things here, going alphabetically through these ships. Starting off with A for Attack Shuttle.
Yeah.
And I think there's something here that we need to have a serious look at. And this is not something that's seeing a lot of meta share recently.
When X-Wing 2.0 started, this was pretty big.
Yeah, this was a bit of a combo. Sabine Wren. And the reason we want to talk about this is because it doesn't really seem to be in part of that ethos where they're correctly weighting something against its pilot ability. Despite the fact that Sabine Wren's not seeing play now, her pilot ability does seem to make her much more powerful than she would appear based on the curve. Zeb's 34 points, Sabine's 38 points, and Hera is 39 points. I think we can safely say that Sabine's ability probably puts her above the power level of Hera.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for this is because Sabine has retained her first edition ability, but now she also gets a red evade action off the back of her boost or barrel roll before she moves. She can then do a blue maneuver and clear the stress, or she can have debris gambit and make that evade white, doing 2 actions before you move that are white. It's really powerful, you guys. It's really good.
And look, just because it's not seeing meta play now,
that's right,
doesn't mean that you shouldn't leave it.
No, I completely agree. It's something that clearly is performing above its pay grade, and for that reason, I just think, a couple of points, making it a bit more expensive than Hera, still keeping it below Ezra as the Force user, I think is the right call to make here. We'll see if FFG just leave it because of the no meta share thing, but I think that would be a mistake. Let's continue moving on. I want to have a quick chat about the A-Wing on the Rebellion.
Yeah. Again, not seeing a lot of play?
No, it's not seeing a lot of play. People are saying it's a little unfair because it's really not all that much cheaper than the RZ2 A-Wing on the Resistance. And it doesn't have any of the spice that it used to.
Yeah, I understand where they're coming from. The RZ2, though, is a different faction ship.
It is a different faction ship, so comparing them directly in a vacuum is not entirely fair. Yeah. Also, I will say, I think the biggest problem with the RZ1 is its lack of toys. And I think a re-release in 2nd edition with more pilots is a better way to address that than a points change.
I'll tell you what they need. Green A-Wing.
A green A-Wing. Yes, we need a green A-Wing. We need Shara Bay. We need fun stuff. There's no, Shardan refit. You can't reduce the points by removing your missile slot anymore.
No.
There's no double talents. I think that's correct. I don't think it should get double talents. I think that's a resistancy thing. Keep that resistancy. Keep the A-Wing with the 1 talent. And look, maybe there's an argument to bring down the points just a little bit for the time being.
Look, also what you could finally end up doing is having a talent which is A-Wing only.
Yeah. There's I think there are design options on this ship. I wanted to bring it up because I know some people are going to say this needs to come down in points. I don't fully agree. I also don't fully disagree. I think that could work. But we'll wait and see. It's in the conversation. Let's move over to the E-Wing. In fact, let's talk about the E-Wing and the TIE Defender together.
Yeah.
Because the E-Wing already looks too cheap. If you compare them in a vacuum, but 0 meta share, absolute stone cold nothing. I'm sure, I say that, I'm sure the odd Corran Horn is spiking tournament somewhere, but we're just not seeing this, and it's weird because it looks like a much better ship than the TIE Defender. You just compare everything 1 to 1 and go, yeah, the stats are better action bar, better upgrade bar, but less play than the Defender somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost feel like this could almost lose 5 points? Maybe.
I think a part of it is it's not a platform the Rebellion wants, and the Rebellion is already a struggling faction. Maybe there's something to do with that. I think reducing it that heavily is dangerous. It feels pretty well balanced as is. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it.
No, my brother used to play 2 X's and an E for a while.
Yeah.
And that was a fun list to verse.
Yeah, it seems interesting. I think I would more readily reduce the TIE Defender.
Yeah.
Very slightly. I think it's a very dangerous ship to make cheap.
We need 3 defenders.
Yeah, no.
3 defender meta.
FFG have specifically balanced the TIE Defender so you can't run 3 of them, but they've made it more powerful to counterbalance that.
Yeah.
In 1st edition, it was basically the only way to fix it. In 2nd edition, that's not the way they're using it. And look, maybe when everything else gets balanced out in the Empire, 2 of them plus something smaller will be a much better viable option. The E-Wing on the Rebellion, I don't know. It's in an awkward spot. I don't think a points change is really what it wants, but it is in the conversation. I do also want to bring up the X-Wing because it by far has the most meta share about everything on the Rebellion. Luke and Wedge is basically in every other Rebel list. In fact, no, they're in most Rebel lists. One of them or both of them. And I'd like to make the statement now, I don't think the X-Wing should change in points.
No. 100% agree.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's good. I think it's good because it's efficient enough without being degenerate.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. I'm sure a lot of Rebel players would agree with me. Maybe some of you think Wedge is a bit too oppressive. I don't think his ability is that bad, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like where he's sitting, and I think, if anything, we should look at the X-Wing just as we're looking at the TIE Fighter. It's a benchmark for balance. We want to try and balance everything else against this and not try and bring the X-Wing down to sort of match the degeneracy of everything else. That's how I feel about this. Last thing I want to talk about is the YT-2400.
Yeah, just ban it.
Just no, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think people look at the 100 point on Dash and say, this is a problem, it's too expensive. I think what people don't generally appreciate is the fact that Dash Render is as expensive as he used to be, but he has his title and heavy laser cannon built into him.
Not only that, it's actually more of a points reduction, just by a little bit here and there.
Yeah, also there's no donut, so he's actually slightly more powerful than he used to be.
Yeah.
Look, I think the only thing that's problematic with Dash is design elements. If FFG do want to target him, they're looking more at the upgrades that go on him, like Han or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's more FAQ than...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's a fringe argument to make Han more expensive, especially if they don't want to change him with an FAQ.
Yeah.
But I think we're talking about the frame. Yeah, look, Dash, no, we're fine. I wouldn't stress too much about this. It's expensive, but that's where he's at right now.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Empire and go through some of these. TIE Defender we've already talked about. But just readdressing.
Yeah, lose 10 points.
No. I think, cheapest platform, the Delta Squadron Pilot, 72 points. Feels about right. It could be a hair cheaper because not seeing much meta play. Again, just like when we're talking about E-Wings and X-Wings, let's address the problematic things and leave these things and see how they fare for the time being. What I want to talk a bit more about is the Alpha Class Star Wing. Because this was seeing a lot more meta play in first edition and not in second edition.
Yeah.
And once again, do we address something by bringing down the points cost?
The problem is that if you start messing with that, you're also going to need to work out something with either the Bomber or the Punisher.
Yeah, for sure. I think the problem with addressing the points cost in the Alpha Class Star Wing is it does things that other Alpha Strike platforms cannot do. Its unique configuration gives it a not strictly better or worse option than other things. And from that point of view, I agree. I think actually just looking at the Bomber and the Punisher is probably the more correct way to address this. I would like to see the Alpha Class Star Wing. It's very much a fan favourite. Anyone that played those old X-Wing and TIE Fighter games loves this platform, and rightly so. But I do want to talk about the two things that are really, really dominant in the Imperial meta right now, and that is Whisper and Redline. I don't think there's anything wrong with these platforms. I think it's the piloted abilities that really push these guys up into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
In the case of Whisper, let's talk about this first. It is worth pointing out that there is a consistent build on Whisper and Duke and Vader, and that does make a fringe argument to change the points on those before we look at the pilot cost of Whisper.
I don't think you could change Duke, though.
No, I think it's problematic because it has a power spike on a couple of platforms in particular.
Yeah.
Vader's already 14 points, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emperor's 16, is he?
What have we got here? No, the Emperor's only 13. The Grand Inquisitor's 16. I think we could make the argument that Vader is just more powerful than the Grand Inquisitor in general.
What we could do, Vader is 16, Grand Inquisitor 14.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to do that. Grand Inquisitor is a very interesting, spicy cut. I'd love to see him seeing a bit more play.
Yeah.
So perhaps, flip those up by 2 points, down by 2 points. It's not hugely impactful, but when something is seeing this much meta play in very initiative-conscious lists, changing the points on an upgrade card is actually huge. Also, Whisper. I was talking before about how pilot abilities are costed. Yeah. Only 2 more points than Echo and 1 higher initiative. I don't think there is enough weight on Whisper.
Although Echo's ability is pretty good.
Echo's ability is really fun. I don't think it's strictly better or worse than Whisper.
Yeah.
But evade tokens, and evade tokens having a strong function on the platform, that's what makes me think Whisper is the really powerful tournament spike consistent ability.
Okay.
And there's almost no weighting on that ability in terms of the costing.
Yeah.
It's 2 points more for one higher initiative on a platform that's so initiative conscious, on a platform that wants Whisper's ability so bad.
So what you reckon?
I think
by 2?
A slight increase, 1 or 2 points is
Yeah.
what I'm probably thinking.
I don't think it doesn't deserve that much more.
No. Again, we're talking about something that's going into lists that are so finely balanced. You don't need a very high increase in points. Moving on to Redline. Because Redline does not have a consistent this is the Redline build, I think we absolutely ignore the upgrades and have a look at the pilot here.
Yeah.
Once again, we're talking about a platform that has had not a lot of weighting into its pilot ability. 2 more points from Death Rain to Redline, 1 more initiative. Initiative 5. Initiative 5 is so important. I think it's the pilot that has to be targeted.
Yeah. Also, I think they started off with the Punisher and they went, let's give them a little bit more.
Oh, they needed a push. It needed a push. If first edition was going to continue and second edition didn't happen, the Punisher, I think, would absolutely be the next ship to get a fix. And got a fix it did. Look, I think in the day, Redline's ability is so powerful. It's an ability that is so efficient. It means if he's flying second after other Initiative 5s, he can boost and target lock and negate the downside of flying second.
Yeah.
He's so powerful with range. With proton torpedoes, he's just a monster, even with just seismic charges. Redline is a beast.
Yeah.
An absolute beast.
So,
yeah.
3 points, 4 points.
Oh, I don't want to name anything in particular again.
Let's not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think absolutely Redline needs the points adjustment.
Yeah.
Out of everything in the Empire, even Whisper, I think Redline has to go up a little bit, just a little bit, and it's going to make a nice adjustment. And that's the things in the Empire I'm looking mainly at. I think there's a conversation around Suntir and Vader, but they're not seeing heavy meta share, and I don't think they're unfair.
Yeah.
They're powerful, but not unfair.
Vader, maybe eventually.
Maybe
I
eventually.
think if you, second points adjustment.
Exactly right. And in the second points
pick.
adjustment, we will have 1 more platform with 3 Force tokens in Darth Maul. And when that happens, I think to myself, okay, now we have something to directly compare against Vader. And then we can start to tweak them against each other, and that feels better. I think letting Vader slide for now is just okay. Just okay. Moving over to my beloved Scum faction, and I look at the Scum faction as being a faction that is just playing what I would categorize as good stuff lists.
Yeah.
Just play the most degenerative, efficient stuff you possibly can, and you will go well. And that's pretty much where the Rebel faction was sitting towards the end of first edition, and the Rebel faction just dominated at the end of first edition.
Oh, yeah.
So I look at particularly my favourite list, Boba, Forlum, Paylob, and there's absolutely a conversation around all 3 of these. Not necessarily the pilots, some of the upgrades. Let's start with Boba. My favourite build, Duke Marauder Han Solo. Some people are playing like IG-88D Marauder Han Solo. I think the key problems here with this build, the key problem with this build is the ultra efficient way of getting access to Han Solo's ability.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. When I first saw that Han Solo was only 4 points, I thought, yep.
That's going to see some play.
I was calling 6 or 7 when I first saw this, so 4, it was very, very aggressive. Free actions, that kind of powerful dice modifying is so good in this environment. I think maybe Boba, but absolutely the Han Gunner card needs to tick up just a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm even going to call. I think 6, 7, 8 points is probably the fair place for it to be sitting.
Or would you consider maybe upping Marauder?
Maybe. But the Gunner on the Fire Spray in general isn't too problematic. What I don't like is the fact that Slave 1 is more expensive than Marauder, and I don't think Marauder is just worse. I think Marauder, giving you a pretty consistent dice mod, I'm activating that rear shot pretty much once every game if I'm flying well. And Slave 1 is good, not great. I really like Slave 1 with Boba. I want to see an environment where Slave 1 is flown with Boba as a competitive option because he's a headhunter. It's what he wants to be doing. So maybe actually doing this with the points, making Marauder a little bit more expensive, Slave 1 a little bit less expensive, maybe both 4 points. It could be a thing. I think that's a key thing going on here. Boba is a problem because of his efficient upgrade cards. I don't think him alone without anything. Like powering out those tokens is not realistic without those upgrades. Debris Gambit, it's such a good card.
Yeah, okay, I can see that, but a lot of things use it. I think talents need to have a separate... We need to have a chat about them by themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I think Debris Gambit and potentially Trick Shot as well
are the
definitely. Two most effective things. Debris Gambit is practically just giving a ship the evade action on Boba Fett and Poe Dameron. And for that reason, I think it could have a points increase. The biggest problem with Boba Fett is Han Solo Marauder, and I think we increase the points on those. Look, Boba Fett goes into lists that are consistently using up all their points. You increase the points on those things, it's not working that efficiently.
Yeah.
Having the option's fine, but it's just too efficient. Just moving over to Forlom and Paylob, I just want to quickly bring these guys up. I don't think they're a huge a problem as Boba Fett and his builds.
Yeah, Forlom having calculate instead of focus, I feel like him...
Like honestly, I fly this list. I feel like he's the least problematic thing.
Yeah.
He's fun. He's really powerful when you use all of his flexibility. But you're already paying for him. He's already heavily weighted over Zuckuss. He's already 2 more points than another pilot that is the same initiative as him.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably fine. He might go up because of meta share, but I don't think that's the right call to make. Paylob, on the other hand, again, he's already heavily weighted because of his pilot ability, but I actually think he could tick up a little bit. In terms of meta share, he is towering over the other Hawk pilots.
Okay.
Even like Raw Garnet on the Rebel faction, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, he's very consistently played in the Scum faction. Taking a token is more powerful than it was in first edition.
Yeah.
So I think even 1 more point, even just a slight increase, would be something worth looking at on Paylob Guatali. Now, at the end of the day, fixing Boba Fett may make Forlom and Paylob not worth changing, but it's a conversation. Just a couple of platforms on the Scum faction that I think are not seeing any love right now is the Skirg Bomber and Jumpmaster. Now, I will say yes. Oh, they saw meta play in first edition. And FFG, I think, made a very conscious effort of making sure that they were under their thumb and not seeing meta play, or at least not being degenerate, and they succeeded, but they are seriously absent.
Yeah, nothing's been happening with them.
And from that point of view, I think FFG can go, okay, look, we didn't break them. Let's just make them a little bit more competitive. I mean, I think the Jump Master is fine, not because of its points, but because of its design. Moving the arc is so difficult. The dial is fair. There's no white Talon rolls. Good.
Yeah.
2 red dice off a single arc. It doesn't even get the bow tie arc. Yeah, it's we can make this cheaper and make it a bit more competitive. It can still be a good alpha striking option without being degenerate. I think FFG have the right design here. They've just got to make it a little bit more powerful. Yeah. Also with the Skirg Bomber, it has lost its torpedoes and missiles, which is a bit unfortunate, but a strong bombing option nonetheless.
Well, it is called the H6 bomber, so you'd expect it to be a bomber rather than...
Yeah, for sure. I still like the fact that it has a turret. I still think that's relevant. It could play around with dorsal turret. I really like that we've got the Rebel Nim ability from first edition on the Scum faction in second ability.
Yeah, that feels good.
And also, it's been made less powerful, but it's also had a big reduction in points. Which leads me to think people are just sleeping on this, because 52 points on Captain Nim is way cheaper than it used to be. Relatively speaking, that's 8 points cheaper. Havoc's no longer free, so the Genius shenanigans are no longer that good or that viable anymore. He doesn't just ignore bombs anymore, which was the more dangerous ability. He can still do stuff with Genius, and I think he's a fun option, and I'd like to see him see a bit more meta play. It seems crazy that we're talking about a 52-point pilot with this much potential explosive power that's just not seeing play.
Yeah.
But maybe he could come down a tad more. Who knows? Maybe when everything else is fairer, he'll see more play.
Yeah.
I think ultimately there's a lot of really powerful options on the Scum faction. And that's maybe why he's not seeing play. But yeah, seems fair enough. One last ship we want to have a talk about. And the only reason we're doing this is because of the meta share. And that's the Quad Jumper. Doing quite well. The Jakku Gunrunner and Anka Plat are both seeing play. And I just think it comes down to their efficiency. Ultimately, I think they're just sitting where they wanted to in first edition.
Yeah, I don't think you need to change the points on these.
No, I think it's probably right not to. I mean, you could make the argument they could be a hair more expensive just to make other ships more relevant. But we're seeing like Boba, 2 gun runners and other stuff and that kind of thing. The occasional Anka Plat to fill out list, but they're filler. They're very potent. They are very much doing what the Scum faction wants. Dirty tricks.
And also these days you've got the TIE Fighter as well, and they're cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. They are cheaper. I mean, they're a lot weaker. But yeah, I think having this as a slightly pushed effect on the Scum faction is just fine. You might not agree. You might play against them regularly at your local game shop and think, oh, no, these are way too degenerate, blah, blah, blah. But I think having this unique effect, which is tractoring during the activation phase, is probably fine where the points they're at. I think adjusting everything else around them, making them okay. Again, talking about the X-Wing, something else is seeing a lot of meta play. I don't think that's a problem either. I think letting everything else sort of balance around these things which are already performing well is an okay thing.
Yeah.
It's about time to wrap up this video, but we do want to quickly mention the Resistance and First Order because we haven't mentioned them in this video, and I think the reason for that is because we don't really have any really solid, concrete meta results from them, and I think in the meantime, let them slide and see what happens.
Yeah. Also, there's just not enough other ships and cards for them to work with.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, just leave them be for now.
Some of them are pushed because of the squad building options, not because they need to be that much better than their Rebel or Empire equivalent.
Yeah. Once, 2 or 3 extra ships come out for the First Order or the Resistance, I think then obviously have a look at them.
Yeah, I mean, our next points adjustment, it'll be sometime halfway through the year. We will have at least one more wave out by that stage, possibly even 2, in fact, probably even 2. And I think that's going to give us a much better indication of where these ships at. So I think it's probably wise to let them be. But who knows? FFG might have some really early testing results. They may have, in playtesting, adjusted other things. And, oh, no, now this thing in the First Order is just broken, so they have to fix it.
Or the bi-hex codes, maybe up it by 1.
It might be that case. We don't know. As I said, we're not part of that playtesting, so we can't really comment. Anyway, guys, in the comment section, what do you think needs to change? These are just our opinions. They don't mean much because we haven't play tested.
No.
And we're just speculating based on what we know about the meta. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Reddit. Please consider supporting the Patreon. Patrons are awesome. We love them lots. Thank you for keeping the lights on this channel. We'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.